The research station on Velcor Prime hummed with its usual evening routine. Arya sat cross-legged on the observation deck, her thermal jacket wrapped loosely around her shoulders as she reviewed data on her tablet. The binary suns had just dipped below the horizon, painting the alien sky in shades of violet and crimson. She felt it before she saw it, a subtle weight pressing against her lower back, followed by the unmistakable sensation of something small and warm, wriggling beneath the hem of her jacket. Arya didn't move. She kept her eyes fixed on the screen, though her attention had shifted entirely to the tiny intruder making itself comfortable against her spine. Through her peripheral vision, she caught a glimpse of striped fur and oversized ears disappearing under the fabric. Core, she thought, with an internal smile. The youngest of the Velcarian cubs. The Velcarians were apex predators on this world, sleek, powerful creatures that resembled a cross between Earth's panthers and something distinctly reptilian. Adults stood nearly 8 feet tall with retractable claws that could shred through reinforced steel and neurotoxic venom that paralyzed prey within seconds. The Galactic Council had classified them as Category 5 threats. First contact protocols required armed escorts and maintained distances of no less than 50 meters. Those protocols hadn't accounted for curiosity. Or cubs. Another weight pressed against her side. Arya suppressed a chuckle as a second cub, Core's littermate judging by the size, squeezed itself beneath her jacket from the left. The fabric bulged awkwardly as both cubs nestled closer to her warmth, their body heat radiating through her shirt. "Dr. Chen," a voice crackled through her comm unit. It was Jenkins, the security officer on duty. "Thermal scanners are picking up multiple heat signatures in your location. Should I send a team?" Arya cleared her throat, keeping her voice steady. "Negative, Jenkins. Just some equipment running hot. Nothing to worry about." "Copy that." She felt tiny claws pricking gently through her shirt. Not enough to break skin, but enough to anchor themselves. The cubs were purring now, a deep thrumming vibration that resonated through her ribcage. It was a sound that had terrified the first human explorers who'd heard it, mistaking it for a hunting growl. But Arya had learned the difference. This was contentment. The mother, Shakera, watched from the shadows near the western archway. Arya could see the reflection of the creature's luminous eyes in the glass panel before her. Any other species would have interpreted this as a threat assessment, a predator calculating the best angle of attack. But Arya had spent 6 months on Velcor Prime. She'd learned to read the subtle language of ear positions, tail movements, and breathing patterns. Shakara wasn't preparing to attack. She was supervising. The Velcarians had initially viewed humans with the same disdain they showed most species, soft, weak things that had no business in a predator's world. But humans had proven difficult to categorize. They carried no natural weapons, possessed no venomous defense, moved with none of the efficient grace of proper hunters. Yet they persisted. They built structures that withstood Velcor Prime's savage storms. They treated injuries with strange medicines that actually worked. And most baffling of all, they showed no fear, not the reckless fearlessness of ignorance, but the calm confidence of a species that had survived its own world's challenges and found them sufficient preparation for anything the universe could offer. A third cub emerged from the darkness, chittering softly. Arya felt the jacket being pulled from her right side as another warm body squirmed its way into the increasingly crowded space. She shifted slightly, adjusting her posture to distribute the weight more evenly. The tablet nearly slipped from her hands. "Getting cozy in there?" she murmured, too quietly for the comm to pick up. Core responded with a sleepy chirp, burrowing deeper against her back. The cub's breathing had already begun to slow, settling into the rhythmic pattern of approaching sleep. Cubs this young needed frequent rest. Their bodies burned energy at an extraordinary rate as they developed the physiological systems that would eventually make them the galaxy's most efficient predators. Arya had read the xenobiology reports. She knew that Velcarian cubs typically slept in a pile, drawn together by instinct and the need for shared warmth during their vulnerable early weeks. She knew that the mother would normally curl around them, her larger body providing both heat and protection. She also knew that Shakera had been injured 3 days ago defending her cubs from a rival predator, a territorial dispute that had left her with cracked ribs and a torn shoulder muscle. Arya had been the one to treat the wounds, working carefully while Shakara's mate stood guard, radiating barely contained aggression. The healing was progressing well, but Shakara couldn't yet curl around her cubs without pain. So the cubs had found an alternative heat source. The fourth and final cub, the runt of the litter, small even by juvenile standards, approached hesitantly. Arya slowly extended her hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. The cub sniffed cautiously, its forked tongue tasting the air around her skin. Then, decision made, it climbed into her lap and immediately wriggled under the jacket to join its siblings. The weight was substantial now. 4 cubs, each roughly the size of a house cat but considerably denser, pressed against her torso from multiple angles. The jacket stretched to its limits, barely containing the mass of fur and scales and contentedly purring predator. Arya set the tablet aside. There was no point pretending to work anymore. She leaned back carefully against the wall, mindful of the precious cargo she carried. Core shifted against her spine, exhaling a warm puff of air that tickled her neck. Through the glass, she could see other researchers moving about the station, humans going about their duties with characteristic efficiency. None of them knew that their xenobiologist was currently serving as a surrogate heating pad for 4 apex predator cubs. The thought made her smile. Shakara moved closer, her luminous eyes studying Arya with an intensity that would have sent most species fleeing. The massive creature lowered herself to the ground nearby, close enough that Arya could hear her breathing, far enough to maintain dignity. "They're safe," Arya said softly, meeting those alien eyes without flinching. "I've got them." Shakara's ears rotated forward, the Velkarian equivalent of a nod. Then she too settled into rest, trusting this strange, soft creature with her most precious treasures. The cubs' purring synchronized into a single resonant frequency. One by one they surrendered to sleep, their small bodies going limp with the absolute trust that only the very young can offer. Arya sat very still, barely breathing, determined not to disturb them. Her back would probably ache tomorrow. Her legs were already going numb, and she'd have to file an amended report explaining why the evening observation data was incomplete. But as she felt 4 tiny heartbeats thrumming against her chest, she decided it was worth it. This was why humans belonged among the stars, not because they were the strongest or the fastest or the most fearsome, but because when something small and vulnerable sought warmth, they were willing to sit still and become shelter, even when that something had claws.